The ceremonial hall glittered with alien crystal chandeliers, their light refracting across the polished floors like fractured starlight, and at the center, Princess Lyara of the Eshari stood with her head held high, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to wed a human, the room buzzing with the hum of diplomatic observers from 3 different systems. And though her people had insisted this union was purely political, she couldn't stop the faint, nervous pulse in her chest. Captain Jaren Holt, the human she had married for peace, looked entirely out of place in the flowing robes of Eshari tradition, his broad shoulders hunched slightly beneath the intricate ceremonial embroidery. Yet there was a calm determination in his eyes, a quiet strength that had already begun to unsettle even the most skeptical council members. And Lyara wondered, for the first time since her upbringing, if there might be more to this man than mere politics. The vows were spoken in a chorus of harmonics that resonated against the walls, their meanings layered and complex, yet Jaren's voice carried a simple, unwavering clarity as he repeated each line, and Lyara felt an odd warmth bloom in her chest, not from romance, but from the certainty that this human was steadfast in a way her own species rarely achieved. As the hall erupted in polite applause, some of it tinged with doubt, some with awe, after the celebrations ended, Lyara led Jaren to the balcony overlooking the sprawling city below, her heart still caught in the tension of the day, and she finally allowed herself a quiet moment of honesty. "Do you understand what you've agreed to, human?" she asked, her voice trembling with the weight of centuries of expectation. And Jaren turned, his gaze steady. "I understand that the galaxy might try to break me, but I also understand I won't." The night sky shimmered with the light of distant suns, and Lyara could feel the pull of every system that had eyes on her marriage, every fleet and every spy waiting to see if the human would falter. And yet, despite the enormity of the situation, he didn't flinch. He only tightened his grip on the railing, his jaw set with the quiet ferocity of a man who had stared down impossible odds before. Weeks passed, and the human's presence in the palace began to unsettle the traditionalists, who whispered behind doors and exchanged concerned glances in the corridors. And Lyara noticed how Jaren moved among the advisors, listening carefully, asking pointed questions about supply lines and defensive protocols, absorbing every detail like he had been born into 1,000 lifetimes of strategy. And she felt a flicker of hope that perhaps he could protect what her diplomacy alone could not. Then the first reports came. A distant system on the border of Eshari space had detected an armada moving faster than known physics allowed, their signatures humanly unrecognizable. And while most of the council panicked, calling for immediate surrender and negotiation, Jaren stood in the war room gone, his eyes scanning the holographic projections of enemy positions, his hands moving over the display with uncanny precision, calculating probabilities and predicting movements that no one else could even conceptualize. Lyara watched him for hours, barely blinking, as he laid out a plan that seemed almost impossible, a human mind threading together variables and contingencies in a way her people had never attempted. And when he finally spoke, it was not with fear but with strategy. "We can hold them, and we will, if we act before they reach the outer colonies," he said. And even the most jaded generals felt their doubts falter, because there was a clarity in his words that resonated deeper than loyalty or tradition. The council voted, reluctantly, to follow his plan, and Lyara felt a mixture of pride and unease as the fleets were mobilized under his command. For the human had no formal rank, no official authority, yet the ships responded as though he were an intrinsic part of their systems, his orders precise, his timing impeccable. And in the quiet moments before battle, she noticed how the human never wavered, never allowed fear to touch his eyes, as if some internal fire shielded him from the panic that gripped everyone else. And then the first strike came, sudden, brutal, the enemy testing the outermost defenses, and every commander on the bridge expected disaster. Yet Jaren's mind was already 3 steps ahead, orchestrating countermeasures, rerouting squadrons, predicting enemy maneuvers with almost preternatural intuition. And as the first ships fell under his command, Lyara felt a deep, almost shocking clarity, that the man she had wed for peace might just be the single reason an entire system could survive. The battle raged across the outer system, streaks of plasma and energy tearing through the void as Jaren's tactical genius unfolded in real time. And Lyara watched from the observation deck, her fingers gripping the railing as if it were a lifeline, the human moving between consoles with effortless authority, directing every squadron, every frigate, With a calm that seemed almost impossible, enemy ships attempted flanking maneuvers, hoping to overwhelm the perimeter defenses, yet Jaren anticipated each move, his voice steady as he issued precise commands, rerouting energy shields, ordering interceptors to break the lines, and even the seasoned alien admirals were forced to marvel at his foresight, the human mind threading together chaos and order in a way no one had thought achievable. Lyara felt a growing sense of awe and fear as she saw the enemy underestimate him repeatedly, their strikes falling into traps so subtle that entire squadrons of attackers were decimated before they even realized. The human had predicted their actions, and she realized that this man, whom she had married reluctantly for diplomacy, had become the linchpin of her entire civilization, a living embodiment of resilience. Hours stretched into what felt like days, the battle pushing every fleet to the brink of exhaustion, yet Jaren remained unshakable, issuing calm, calculated instructions, his mind a machine of strategy and instinct. And Lyara began to understand that the human capacity for adaptation, for thinking beyond standard tactics, was something her species had never truly seen, a spark that could turn desperation into victory. Reports of destroyed enemy cruisers and lost squadrons poured in, yet Jaren remained focused, never allowing pride or relief to cloud his judgment. And Lyara noticed how he constantly recalibrated, analyzing every success and failure with equal intensity, his eyes scanning the holographic displays, as if he could see not only what was but what would be, the enemy's every choice anticipated and countered before it could be executed. In the midst of chaos, an explosion rocked the observation deck, sending Lyara and several aides tumbling, yet Jaren's calm voice came over the comms, precise and commanding: stabilize the shields, reroute power to the aft batteries, prepare countermeasure protocols. And even from a distance, she felt the pulse of authority, the magnetic force of someone who refused to allow fear or death to define the moment. As the enemy fleet began to retreat from the outer colonies, Lyara noticed a quiet shift among her people, a newfound respect and disbelief, whispered conversations of the human who commanded not by rank but by intellect, by courage, by sheer will. And she felt a sense of pride she had never imagined, that the man she had married for political necessity was rewriting the definition of heroism before her eyes. Jaren, sensing the thinning enemy numbers, pressed forward with careful aggression, striking the pursuing ships with precision strikes that left the opposition scattered and demoralized. And Lyara, watching him, realized that this was no ordinary human, no mere soldier, but someone whose determination, creativity, and fearlessness could rival entire fleets and governments, turning the tide of battle single-handedly. By the time the final enemy ships retreated, the system was battered but intact, and the alien admirals, once skeptical and dismissive, bowed in recognition of his achievement, their minds struggling to reconcile centuries of military doctrine with the undeniable reality that a single human had defended an entire system. And Lyara felt an overwhelming sense of relief and awe, knowing that she had witnessed something extraordinary, a hero unlike any her people had ever seen. That night, as Lyara and Jaren stood together on the palace balcony, the stars above reflecting the calm after the storm, she could finally speak without hesitation. "You have done what no one else could." And he turned to her, eyes tired but steady, a faint smile crossing his face. "I only did what had to be done." And she realized that the peace she had sought through marriage had been secured, not by diplomacy alone, but by the courage, brilliance, and unyielding spirit of the human she had married. The system had breathed a fragile sigh of relief, but Jaren knew the war was far from over, his mind already calculating the next moves of those who had survived the first clash. And Lyara could see the restless intensity in his eyes, the same spark that had guided every maneuver, every decision, now shifting toward ensuring that the enemy would never again threaten their people. While the council debated rebuilding defenses and fortifying fleets, Jaren walked among the engineers and pilots, asking precise questions about ship performance, energy output, and weapon efficiency, his curiosity insatiable, his human perspective noticing flaws and inefficiencies that centuries of alien practice had ignored. And Lyara marveled at how seamlessly he adapted to a culture that had once seemed foreign and rigid. News arrived that a neighboring system, emboldened by the apparent vulnerability, had begun mobilizing its own forces, and once again, panic began to ripple through the Eshari government. Yet Jaren's calm voice cut through the fear, his strategy forming almost in real time, a layered approach that relied on rapid strikes, misdirection, and the exploitation of enemy assumptions. And Lyara felt the same awe she had felt in the first battle. Now deepened by experience, he drew detailed maps in the war room, every line and symbol carefully considered, explaining to the alien generals the human logic behind his maneuvers, and while some were initially dismissive, they could not argue with the clarity of his reasoning or the speed with which he anticipated enemy reactions. And Lyara noticed a subtle shift in their respect, a grudging acknowledgement that the human she had married was something beyond their comprehension. Jaren spent nights on the deck of the flagship, observing drills, analyzing the enemy's previous attacks, predicting weaknesses, and when he rested, it was for only a few hours, his mind never truly ceasing its work. And Lyara, standing beside him during the quiet moments before dawn, could feel the weight of his dedication, a mixture of discipline and instinct that seemed almost superhuman in its intensity. When the enemy finally made their approach, the second wave was larger, faster, and more determined, their tactics more complex and unpredictable. Yet Jaren remained the calm center in a storm of chaos, issuing orders that danced between offense and defense with precision. The fleet, moving as though guided by a single mind, his human ingenuity turning desperation into a controlled and devastating response. Lyara watched as entire enemy squadrons were outmaneuvered, their assaults collapsing before they could strike, the human predicting, adapting, and exploiting weaknesses that had never been seen by any other species. And she felt a deep, stirring pride, the kind that resonated not from nobility or power, but from witnessing the extraordinary potential of one individual to change the course of events on a galactic scale. Even as victory began to tilt in their favor, Jaren refused to relent, analyzing every retreating vessel, calculating whether they could regroup, predicting the enemy's next moves, and giving orders that ensured no opportunity for counterattack. And Lyara began to realize that his brilliance was not in brute force but in the perfection of anticipation, in the relentless pursuit of security for those who could not defend themselves. By the time the last enemy ships fled, broken and scattered, the system had endured the unimaginable, and alien leaders who had once doubted the human's worth now approached with reverence, their minds struggling to reconcile tradition with the undeniable reality of his achievements. And Lyara felt a profound respect for the man who had been thrust into an impossible position and had emerged, not just victorious but legendary. That evening, as the fires of battle cooled into distant embers across the system, Lyara stood with Jaren on the observation balcony, her hand resting lightly on his arm, and she spoke softly. "You have protected them all, more than anyone could have imagined," and he looked at her with quiet resolve. "I did what was necessary," and in that moment, Lyara understood that the human she had married for the sake of peace had become the symbol of hope, courage, and the unyielding spirit that could turn the tide of entire wars. The system had survived, battered but unbroken. Yet Jaren knew that the enemy would not stay idle, his mind already turning to contingencies, alliances, and the possibility of further incursions, and Lyara could see the weight of responsibility pressing on him. The same calm determination that had carried them through to battles, now tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. As the Alien Council convened, eager to reward bravery and discuss reparations, Jaren quietly studied the fleet reports, identifying weaknesses in the defenses and opportunities to strengthen the system against future threats. And Lyara marveled at how his human perspective found solutions that centuries of Eshari tradition had overlooked. Innovations so simple yet devastatingly effective that they would forever change the way her people approached strategy. The human continued to train with the pilots, working alongside engineers, recalibrating weapons systems, and redesigning defensive protocols, his presence alone inspiring confidence, and even those who had once doubted him now sought his counsel, recognizing that his intellect, courage, and instinct were far more valuable than any ceremonial rank. And Lyara realized that her marriage for peace had inadvertently given her people a protector unlike any they had ever known. One evening, an urgent transmission arrived from the outer colonies, indicating another fleet had been detected, this one larger and more aggressive than anything before, and Lyara felt a ripple of tension among the council. Yet Jaren stood calm, analyzing data with the same unyielding focus, issuing instructions, predicting enemy maneuvers, and preparing defenses as if he had faced this very moment 1,000 times before. The battle commenced with terrifying speed, waves of enemy vessels striking with precision and ferocity. Yet Jaren orchestrated every move with unmatched skill, guiding their forces through chaos, creating opportunities where none seemed possible. And Lyara, observing from the command deck, felt her heart pound with a mix of fear and admiration. The human she had wed single-handedly, turning desperation into a symphony of tactical brilliance. Enemy commanders, confident in their superiority, found themselves ensnared in strategies they could not comprehend. Their fleets decimated as Jaren anticipated every maneuver, exploited every weakness, and executed counterattacks with devastating efficiency. And Lyara could scarcely believe the scale of his achievements, the way a single human mind could orchestrate the survival of an entire system, shaping the destiny of countless lives with nothing more than intellect, courage, and resolve. As the hours passed, the enemy began to falter, confusion and fear spreading through their ranks, and Jaren pressed the advantage without hesitation, ensuring no vessel escaped to threaten the colonies again, his every order precise, measured, and effective. And Lyara felt a surge of hope she had never known, realizing that the man she had married, not for love but for politics, had become the living embodiment of heroism, unmatched by any alien or human alike. When the final enemy ships fled into the void, broken and scattered, the system erupted in celebration. But Lyara knew that Jaren would not rest, his mind already calculating improvements, fortifications, and strategies to ensure lasting peace. And she marveled at his tireless dedication, his unwillingness to accept anything less than security for those under his protection. A human who had turned the impossible into reality. That night, standing together on the palace balcony, watching the stars reflect the remnants of battle fires below, Lyara finally spoke her heart aloud. "You have done more than protect a system. You have changed the course of our history." And Jaren, weary but steady, placed a hand over hers. "I only did what had to be done." And she realized that his humility was as remarkable as his genius, a combination of strength and modesty that made him truly extraordinary in the quiet aftermath. As systems rebuilt and peace settled like a gentle tide across the colonies, Lyara understood that her marriage had achieved far more than diplomacy, for she had not only secured peace, but had given her people a symbol of hope, courage, and determination, a human who had defended them all single-handedly. And as she looked at Jaren, she knew that the story of their union would be told for generations, a tale of heroism that transcended species, politics, and expectation.